How do you sum this up? How do you sum up just the amount of raw emotion on offer here today? What a race this was. Probably the best Italian Grand Prix in so many years. Hell, probably the best Grand Prix I've watched in a long, long time. Welcome, folks, to Pits to Podium and also on the Inside Line Formula One podcast. It's myself, Soumil Arora here, and I've got Kunal Shah here with me, as always. And today we are going to do the impossible. Try to sum up this dramatic masterpiece that was the Italian Grand Prix. And today my heart feels so warm because after all the hardships and difficulties and all the lows that Pierre Gasly came up to, today he's a Grand Prix winner, Kunal.
Yes, hi guys, hi Soumil. It's a very tough race to actually summarize. When the going goes mad, the mad get going, and that's literally what happened. And I'll put it this way: when I was summarizing notes from the race, discussing it with you, and I asked myself, was this really a great race? And the answer
Yeah,
was actually it's not.
yeah,
It wasn't a great race. It's just a great result for
exactly.
Formula One because for the first time since 2014 we've had a non-Mercedes, non-Ferrari, non-Red Bull podium. And of course, like you said, Pierre Gasly, it is so heartwarming to see him win a Formula One Grand Prix.
After all that he's been through in the last year, it just makes you feel so good. But apart from Pierre Gasly as well, there were so many big results that we have to analyze, and we'll get down to that. But before we get to all of that, folks, we have this thing called the Pits to Podium moment here at P2P. We generally tend to pick out one favorite moment of the race. Now, there are we're actually pleased to quite a few of them for the first time because normally this season, apart from a few couple of races here and there, we have had some absolute stinkers. But what can we say about this one? We just have so many moments to choose from. So, Kunal, I'm going to put you in a bit of a spot. What is your Pits to Podium moment for today?
It's a tough one. The funny one would be Kevin Magnussen giving us the red flag opportunity. Okay. But I would say I have a podium to pits moment that literally just happened. Okay. Which was Lewis Hamilton pitting, when the pit lane was shut. Of course, I expect a lot of controversy to build up, in the next 48 hours around this issue because Mercedes will say, okay, we didn't get this. And Lewis will say, I couldn't see the lights. And of course, lots of opinions will come out. But the truth is that, Mercedes's robust race operations finally had one small silly error that cost them a
Yeah.
very comfortable race win. And that to me is my podium to pits moment for the 2020 Italian Grand Prix.
That's some excellent wordplay right there. Completely nailing it down. But yeah, Mercedes, they never slip up. They never make a mistake like this one. But yeah, some days you just have an off day like this. And actually, this sparks up a very controversial question that we shall answer later on about whether the lights were visible or not, whether the penalty was deserved or not. One thing we can say is Hamilton was furious. He was agitated. We saw him say a lot of explicative words that we tend to avoid here on Pits to Podium, and we saw him vent out his aggression. But in the end, folks, there was a good catch about that because Lewis Hamilton, in the end, salvaged a very good result and ended up finishing in P number 7. So we shall come down to that much later about the championship challenge and what this means for that. But Kunal, the first question that anyone who's missed the race is bound to ask: how on earth did Pierre Gasly win in an Alpha Tauri? This team never comes close to the podium. But last year they salvaged 2 podiums. This year they've gone all cowabunga mode. And after 10, no, not even 10 years, 12 years, they've won a race. And that too at the same circuit where they did for the first time.
Yes, their love affair with Monza continues. Okay. And, 2008 Monza, brilliant memories for all of
Yeah.
us. I don't know how old you were then,
That was my
but
first race ever. 2008 Monza was the first race I ever followed, 5 years alone. Lovely
well,
memories.
2020 Monza was my daughter's first race ever.
Yeah.
Okay, so I had the pleasure of holding her in my arms and trying to get her to see it. I'm just kidding, she was just around and trying to absorb the Formula One atmosphere that usually
She'll get
lives at
used to it.
home.
She'll
Yeah,
get used to it.
but how did Pierre Gasly win it? Firstly, Soumil, you and I in the pre-race video, the race review video that we do, we actually spoke about how Gasly has hit fantastic momentum.
Hmm.
Okay. And it's great to see that momentum that he's had in 2020 be rewarded with a race win,
Yeah,
especially after the roller coaster 12 months he's had with Red Bull demotion, with his house burglary, and so on.
yeah,
And frankly, he just won by not making a pit stop when everyone else did, and then using the rule that allows drivers to make a free stop under the red flag restart. And that's how he ended up winning. He pulled away, he built a consistent gap. And then when Carlos Sainz came chasing, Carlos was of course a few laps a little later, but Gasly drove the wheels off his Gasmobile
yeah.
to make sure he finishes ahead.
And we have to credit him for that one, because although you may be saying, yeah, it may be just a fluke, Mercedes don't always falter, you don't get a free pit stop on the red flags every time. Given that, agreed, that doesn't always happen. But the way Pierre Gasly defended in those final laps, Carlos Sainz was a charging, prancing horse. Sorry about that terrible pun, but Carlos Sainz was coming, and he was coming fast. But Gasly defended incredibly well, although there still was a big gap between him and Carlos Sainz while finishing, as Kunal rightly pointed out. He drove the wheels of those gas mobiles. An amazing drive by Pierre Gasly. You have to credit him for that. But the interesting point is, the revolving door around Red Bull has made a lot of people come and go. And interestingly, it's not Ricciardo, it's not Sainz, it's not Albon, it's the man who got demoted who's actually won the race first out of those three guys since that demotion happened. Bizarre.
And Pierre Gasly could very well become the first driver who gets a recall
Yeah,
to the Red Bull Racing A team to be alongside Max Verstappen and the likes. And I think that in itself would be the best reward for the momentum that we
absolutely.
just spoke about that he's carried. And let's also remember Lance Stroll actually started the race on pole at the restart. Okay,
Yeah,
so it wasn't that Gasly just got lucky.
yeah, he
He of
had to
course
fight
got
for it. Yeah,
lucky. Yeah, he had to fight for it. He made the most of his luck, and he made the most of his talent today, I would say.
absolutely. And I think Gasly probably would be the first French winner in a long time. It's been a while since that country has produced a credible Grand Prix winner. And you may say that this one wasn't exactly the most credible of wins, but it's coming. You get a feeling that Gasly, with the kind of momentum he's on, he's just riding the wave, and he's soon going to be right at the very top. And you have to feel for him. What a man. But we actually have to get to Stroll as well, because Lance Stroll could have defined this race as well. It could have been the Canadian driver's first ever Grand Prix win. And in fact, Racing Point's first ever win as well. In fact, even Force India's first ever. I mean, if you still consider them to be the same team, but still, it didn't happen in the end, Kunal. As you mentioned, Stroll had pole position on the second restart, but perhaps that lockup that he made while trying to pass Kimi Raikkonen early on, and then all the drama that ensued, just didn't really play out in his favor.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, while they'll be happy with the podium, they should be unhappy that they couldn't go and win,
Hmm.
because this was that one race that pretty much every midfield team and driver keeps hoping for to happen, once in a decade, twice
Yeah,
in a decade, where you are able to go and score a big result. And starting P1 with the 2019 Mercedes design philosophy, with the Mercedes engine, but still not delivering a win will sort of hurt Lance Stroll. All right. But nevertheless, to see a Gasly, Sainz, and Stroll podium in itself is a fantastic result for Formula One.
exactly. But Kunal, just diving a bit deeper into Racing Point very quickly before we move to McLaren, is it safe to say that this strategy hasn't worked out? Because we thought of Barcelona, Racing Point will be there. They perhaps will have P number 4. Now at the start of the season, just looking at the qualifying lap times, we thought, oh wow, these guys are fast. You know what? They can actually challenge Red Bull. But they're not even doing that right now. So what's going on over there? Is it just that this philosophy has backfired, perhaps? Or since ever since that hearing was announced, things have just been taking a sharp downhill turn for them.
So my view is that one of the reasons why Spa and Monza this year haven't really worked in favor of Racing Point is because of this new philosophy that they've undertaken, as since we call them the pink Mercedes cars, right?
Yeah.
And the team, of course, admitted in the build up to Monza that this new philosophy is what is taking time for them to sort of understand. and is one of the reasons why they're not as strong as they've historically been at these circuits. So it's just about, they put on a new what do you call it, paint on the car, and the paint is not looking good for some reason.
Yeah.
And that's it's just how they're still probably taking time to extract more performance
Yeah.
from the 2019 pink Mercedes cars that they're racing this season. And just goes to show, just copying a car isn't
Yeah.
enough to deliver great results. It's about understanding that design philosophy, and
Exactly.
that's what's probably taking them time this year.
Exactly. I remember only until a couple of years ago, I used to sit back and think, yeah, but why can't they just copy the other car? I mean, you just have to take a few aerodynamic components and swap it around a little bit here and there. Nah, it's much more serious than that. And Racing Point can attest to that after their experiences from this year. But hey, let's leave the pink Mercedes aside. Let's move to probably their biggest competitors and the biggest challenges for this year. And McLaren have scored 30 points. Now, take your mind back. This isn't 1998, or this isn't 2008 either. It's not even 1988 where you think, oh, 30 points from McLaren. Woohoo, that's a big weekend for them. No, it's 2020. And McLaren are here. I mean, they've got a superb result in the end. P2 and P4, if I'm not mistaken, for Lando Norris. But Kunal, is it a good weekend for them? Because somewhere deep down, they must be thinking, oh man, we could have had a double podium. We could have had Carlos Sainz winning this as well.
Well, Carlos Sainz said he would have probably been P2 even if this was a regular race, okay? But given how the whole race order turned around with the timing of the red flag and the restart and so on, I think they would consider themselves lucky to sort of be able to finish second in the race. Great to hear Carlos Sainz's radio message where he said, no, but I need to go chase Pierre for the win. I'm not going to settle for second and so on. But the fact remains that, McLaren was able to make all those overtakes when somebody like a Mercedes were struggling to make those overtakes. So in all, as a team, they'd be extremely pleased to score 30 points. It's the maximum of any other team, at the 2020 Italian Grand Prix. And second and fourth just reminds us of, all the good nostalgic days that, we've seen for McLaren.
Absolutely. And I can imagine the mood at the dinner table now. Zach Brown, Lando Norris, and Carlos Sainz. Zach Brown is having the biggest smile on his face. He's wide open. He's got all of his teeth showing. And Carlos Sainz and Lando are thinking, yeah, not a good day for us. But on the whole, for a team manager, this is the best thing that you could ask for. 30 points, nothing more. But even more so for AlphaTauri's team manager, for Franz Tost, this will be an absolute dream. But all that aside, we've discussed McLaren, we've discussed AlphaTauri, Racing Point, who all of a sudden became the big stars, these three teams here today. But we often tend to speak about Mercedes in great light. Today, not exactly the most favorable day. We have already spoken about what's happened to Mercedes, and we can say that, yeah, the lights were flashing. Hamilton should have not come in. Perhaps you could blame the team as well for a certain part not informing. And a lapse of concentration. But it's so pleasing to see Lewis Hamilton fight for every single win. Hey, he's still fine. He still finished 5-6 odd points behind Valtteri Bottas right now. So it's not a major dent in the championship for him too. But just the hunger of this man. It's amazing.
It is. And, the guys who built the 90th win for Lewis Hamilton, which was accidentally fired at the qualifying session, they'll have to just probably wait one more race. I'm sure Lewis just thinks of this race as an outlier, that one he should have won, he could have won because he was comfortably leading. And, I think he will also understand why the team called him when they did and so on. And, a lot of people have been saying, but, the FIA needs to streamline how they communicate to the teams and stuff. But for those who don't know, there is something called as a data channel that runs in the paddock, which is available to all the teams in real time and to the media. And that's how I know, because I have access to it as well. And the fact is, the FIA constantly updates track status on that data channel. And one fails to understand why Mercedes, would have, I mean, assuming somebody says that the information isn't distributed, I wouldn't agree with that view, because Mercedes would, and of course, have access to that system as well. So it's okay to say that, hey, we made a silly error.
Yeah.
And the fact that we brought Lewis in when the pit lane was closed, and move on, because at the end of the day, they know they have a great car when they're running up front.
Yeah.
And I'm sure the rival teams must be relishing the fact that when Mercedes is running in the midfield, that they are struggling. And this is why all the talks about reverse grids and doing whatever they can to put Mercedes in dirty air will come up in the build up to the next race in Mugello.
Special insights, folks. You saw it here on Pits to Podium very first. But yeah, shit happens sometimes. Did I say that loud? Okay, it's all right. Sometimes it works out, but things happen sometimes. Sometimes you do make errors. Sometimes you do have a lapse in concentration. And for Mercedes, they've essentially got this whole thing wrapped up. So it's all about which driver wins in this case. And okay, it's all right. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. And it's their hunger in such situations that makes them the best team in the world and probably the best in history, I can say. Debatable, of course, but we shall speak about that on a different day. But what really makes me very curious is that when I was watching the first 7 odd laps, I thought, oh, Valtteri Bottas, you poor old soul, you've gone a bit too light once again, and all the others have pounced on you, all the others have capitalized. Bottas said it was a puncture, which it wasn't, something to do with the front wing, which it wasn't, then something else as well, which it ultimately wasn't as well. So there was a whole range of excuses going around, but it was in the end just a little bit too conservative, perhaps I must say, about Valtteri Bottas. Again, easier said than done. I'm sitting here in a cold, chilled room in Mumbai making these judgments while Bottas is out there doing that. So full credits to him. It's not as easy as you think it is. But on the whole, Kunal, after that recovery, after Hamilton got the penalty, there was an outlying feeling that, hey, Valtteri Bottas, Hamilton is last. He can grab as many points as he missed after a couple of DNFs in here and there. But no, it didn't work out that way, did it?
It didn't, and it all boils down to the fact that Mercedes has traditionally not been great in traffic because they've built the fastest cars and they realize they don't need to
They
bother
don't
about
need
others
to.
chasing them. Yeah, so it's again a different design philosophy. I think Bottas, had a bad start and just lost so much forward momentum in the opening couple of laps that he was just going backwards,
Yeah.
and then he couldn't make a dent because of the fact that they couldn't change engine mode. So that was another great feeling that the rule on that they've introduced from this weekend, which is to have single engine mode from qualifying to the race.
Yeah.
I think that in itself, at least again, one race is too little a data point, but it made a bit of a difference, I would say. And all in all, it was heartening to see that even Mercedes could struggle despite being on such an outright pace circuit.
They can. They absolutely can. And now the interesting thing is Bottas has pipped Max Verstappen for P number 2 in the title. But I've got to ask you this, Kunal. The races have expanded. We have more of them right now. But can you just feel that perpetual thing of the mid-season coming in and Bottas just losing his grip on the title, as he always tends to do, sadly?
Well, I'm sure he's trying his best.
He is, yeah.
I think he's been really impressive in qualifying this year, I must say.
Yeah.
The gap that he's had to Lewis has been so small. It's almost negligible in conditions where things have been run normally. And like we keep saying, every time he delivers a brilliant lap, Lewis figures how to go that half a tenth quicker, okay, and just be on pole. And I think Valtteri's, of course, struggled a lot with his race starts and his opening lap, and that's what has sort of cost him, some good results, and has allowed Max to sort of sneak in. But like you said, I expect Mercedes to just remain 1-2 anyway till the end of the season. I mean, in the Drivers' Championship.
Exactly. And this rivalry just kind of reminds me of that old 2007 ad that Mercedes had done with Fernando Alonso and Lewis Hamilton. And the title was aptly anything you can do, I can do better. Well, that's Hamilton and Bottas in this year for you. But it's actually going on to one other team, which should have been their competitors, but they aren't. And it was their home race, the first of 3 home races for them, mind you. It's time for the Ferrari zone. Let's make it a big thing on Pits To Podium here. Let's speak about them every single time, as we always do. And I kind of have a feeling. Okay, first let's get the monkey off our back. Thank goodness that Leclerc is all right. Hefty impact, that one at the exit of Parabolica. First thing, I'll actually have to ask you, what went wrong there for Charles Leclerc? Was it dirty air? Was it just losing the back end? Was it the AstroTurf? What was it all about?
Judging by his onboard radio reaction, I think he was just pushing too hard. And we've seen time and again, when you push too hard, and especially given the fact that after the restart, he was suddenly running close to the top five, something that he probably he didn't expect through the weekend. So it was just a small margin of error where he probably went a little over the edge of adhesion as he would.
Yeah.
We saw the back step out a bit. He tried to correct, and then unfortunately he got the wall at the Parabolica. But full marks for trying, as he's always had, for Charles, and probably not full marks for trying for Ferrari when it comes to Sebastian Vettel. Because to have a brake lining explored, I'd love to know in the next few hours. They'll probably release why that happened to Sebastian when it did.
I kind of have a conspiracy theory. Having both cars retire is much better than seeing them lapped on your 999th Grand Prix. So it's a lot less embarrassing for them, mind you. But yeah, in the end, it's sad to say, but yet another disastrous weekend for Ferrari. We're getting used to this now.
Yeah, we should start a petition each time Sebastian Vettel has a bad race, or he doesn't or he retires mid race. He should hang up his helmet and go sit on the commentary booth for F1 TV, because it'll be really exciting to see his view of what's happening at the race. You all would have seen, he went to the Parabolica grandstand and he was making comments on, okay, that guy missed the apex, and okay, that that car's doing this. So unfortunate the way it's going with Sebastian, but I think if Ferrari don't mind it, I don't think any one of us should mind what's happening with Sebastian Vettel.
And as much as I would love to see it, I don't want to see Sebastian Vettel as a commentator right now. Not just yet. Not just when he's in his 30s. And I still feel he has a lot to give. That's a debate for later on as well. We've been speaking about this on Pits to Podium for months, about where does Sebastian Vettel go. I don't think that's the most important topic for now, but we shall move down into the midfield where we have more important topics to cover. And he may have finished in P number 13, but it was special to see Kimi Räikkönen, the old man, 40-year-old Kimi Räikkönen, chillax as ever, as chill as he can possibly get, still fighting out for positions. Yeah, shame about the result, but hey, Kimi fighting in Monza, like the good old days.
Yes, it was lovely to see him up there fighting with all the young boys. He just didn't have the package. He just didn't have the package to, sort of back his position up. He went backwards, which is understandable given the issues that they've all had with the Ferrari power units. But, great stuff by Kimi again, with the whole running order being turned around with just before the red flag, offered us exciting racing in the top 10. Also, I would like to, mention that Nicholas Latifi was just about 6-8 seconds away from scoring his first points in Formula One. He finished ahead of George Russell, which doesn't happen as regularly. But all in all, another exciting midfield, battle that came up. This time, the midfield, of course, became the top of the field.
Yeah.
For the second half of the race.
Exactly. Drama everywhere. And if you're wondering, and if you haven't watched the race yet, and I know I didn't as well, but we aren't speaking about Max Verstappen as much because he retired with the problem as well. Alex Albon got bogged down with that penalty, ended up recovering decently enough. So Red Bull also were out of the contention. But Kunal, just before we wrap all this up, and I know it's been a long and lovely one, any other standout driver that you have in mind from this race weekend? We've already mentioned the likes of Norris and Pierre Gasly, of course, then Carlos Sainz and Perez as well. But if you had to pick any other driver that you would nominate for this one, who would it be? Because there were quite a few unsung heroes from this one, I suppose.
Yes, there were. I would pick Daniel Ricciardo. We spoke about him in the race preview that he gets one chance and he delivers. He did the same thing in qualifying. In the race, let's remember, lots of variables that came into play, so no point judging the eventual result of sixth, which actually is not too bad for Renault. But I think the Renaults in itself had a decent result. They're going to be renamed as Alpine.
Alpine, yeah.
That's the English pronunciation, at least for 2021. So fantastic to see Daniel be pulling it off yet another weekend.
Absolutely. And hopefully they name their car the Alpine A110 next year, because that is a little gem of a car. I really love the way it looks. But on the whole, Kunal, lovely weekend yet again. Renault doing their best. McLaren getting 30 points. Racing Point getting a podium once again. They will be a bit bitterly disappointed. Mercedes faltering and Pierre Gasly winning in the end. So if you had to choose one word to round it off, and I think this is going to be the last question that we have here for today, what would that one word be? It's pandemonium for me, frankly.
I would say I probably do a wordplay, which great result, but an okay race. That's where I would put it.
Yeah.
The variables at play is what made the race great, not the racing per se in itself. And I mean overall, when you look at all the 53 laps, somebody listening and saying, "Hey, lap 43 to 53 was brilliant," or 33 to 53 was brilliant. Yes, it was, but I'm talking of the overall racing that happened. But one standout thing, Soumil, before we go, was for the first time, the DRS wasn't as overpowering in Monza. Where the driver that was defending or being followed wasn't just a sitting duck. The driver was able to sort of rely on defense to still keep position. And in a way, I'm glad that Pierre Gasly won the race and he didn't lose the lead to Carlos Sainz on the last lap, thanks to DRS.
Exactly. That would have been such a big shame, right? But it's good to see that. It's good to see DRS, this more artificial overtaking technique, rather, being underpowered. But on the whole, Kunal, lovely weekend. I know both of us were buzzing. We were struggling to find our words. At least I was before we had this chat, before we started recording this one. But man, that's how you spend your Sunday. That is how you spend your Sunday. You watch, as you mentioned, not exactly the best of races, but sometimes the result is just too special for you. And this was yet another one of those cases. But on the whole, Kunal, once again, thank you so much for joining me as always. And once again, folks, if you haven't wished Kunal congratulations yet, you have to. He's just a father right now. And
thanks once again, Soumil.
My pleasure. My pleasure. And if you've reached so far, we know you've enjoyed this one. So why don't you leave a like? Why don't you share this video with your fellow F1 community members? And also subscribe to Pits To Podium while you're at it. I'm sure you'll not regret it. Thank you so much for watching, folks. And we shall see you midweek for yet another race, which should be Mugello, Ferrari's 1000 Grand Prix. That should be a fun one. Until then, folks, good night and goodbye.
See you guys. Bye-bye.